Dr. Nathan Cross never believed in the supernatural until his death. As he fell into an abyss beneath Antarctica, his body was crushed by ice, and his pulse stopped for 12 minutes. However, what he saw after death defied science itself. Jesus appeared, revealing a shocking truth. The Antarctic ice walls are not natural, but divine seals that imprison something ancient and unknown. Returning from the dead, Nathan must warn the world before the deception begins. My name is Dr. Nathan Cross, and what I'm about to tell you may cost me my life. For years I've dedicated my life to science, logic, and empirical evidence. As a geophysicist specializing in polar research, my work focused on understanding the Earth's most extreme environments. I've never believed in the supernatural. I dismissed conspiracy theories and laughed at claims of hidden truths beneath Antarctica's ice. But when I died, everything changed. I never imagined I'd be here, writing this testimony and revealing secrets that powerful people don't want revealed. Even now I hesitate. I am aware of the risks. They're watching. They do not want the truth to reach you. I've witnessed others being silenced, discredited, or forced to disappear for speaking out. Some have previously attempted to warn us, but their voices were drowned out by a flood of ridicule and official explanations. I was once one of them, a skeptic. I believed in what could be quantified, observed, and validated. But in February 2025, on a classified Antarctic expedition, I encountered something beyond human comprehension. Something had been buried for millennia. Something we were never supposed to find. And when I died that day, I realized the terrifying truth. It was not an accident. It wasn't just another unfortunate expedition failure. It was a warning, a final message from beyond the veil, one that you must hear before it is too late. I understand how the sentence sounds. If I had read these words a year ago, I would have dismissed them immediately. I would have scoffed at this, dismissing it as yet another sensationalized hoax relegated to the realm of online conspiracy forums. However, I witnessed the hidden truth. And I spoke with him, Jesus Christ himself, who showed me the deception that is coming to the world. I was clinically dead for 12 minutes. During that time, I witnessed the true nature of Antarctica, what has been kept hidden from humanity for generations, and why the world's most powerful organizations are working non-stop to control the narrative. The present isn't a game. The deception is already underway. The conditioning has started. In the coming months, expect major announcements about Antarctica, scientific discoveries, unprecedented findings, and possibly even whispers of extraterrestrial contact. But don't believe what they say. The truth is much darker. And if you're not ready, you'll be led astray. I'm not sure how much time I have before they silence me too. But first, let me tell you everything. I will explain what I witnessed, what is on the horizon, and the actions you need to take to ensure your survival. Because once the seal is broken, there is no going back. I never questioned why certain parts of Antarctica were off-limits. Scientists were well aware of government-restricted zones, areas where research permits were nearly impossible to obtain for various reasons, including environmental protection and geopolitical treaties. But now I realize they were lies. In late 2024, I was assigned to lead a high-priority research team to one of these no-go zones. Our mission is to investigate unexplained electromagnetic anomalies found beneath the ice. These signals were unlike anything previously recorded, fluctuating at low frequencies and defying known geological activity. They moved as though responding to something. Our team was small but elite, consisting of hand-picked scientists, engineers, and military personnel working under the guise of a geological survey. I should have questioned why our team included intelligence operatives, men carrying weapons rather than scientific instruments. But I was too focused on the data to realize that the site had been classified for decades. No civilian research teams had previously been granted access. The project was funded by an undisclosed government agency, and the oversight went far beyond the Antarctic Treaty's standard protocols. We had unprecedented clearance levels, but we were kept in the dark about what we were looking for. The first thing that jumped out was the security. When we arrived at our base, a high-tech station built into the ice far from known research outposts, we were greeted by armed personnel. This was not a typical scientific mission. Every transmission was monitored, and we were required to sign strict non-disclosure agreements. Our findings were only to be shared with designated officials. There was something else. I noticed a separate team of engineers, geophysicists, and archaeologists. They were not drilling for ice cores or researching climate change. They were looking for something buried below us. They knew exactly what they were looking for. I inquired about it with another scientist, Dr. Patel, a glaciologist. He appeared nervous and hesitant before whispering. They discovered something under the ice years ago, but they won't tell us what. That was the first time I felt unease, a sense that we weren't just collecting data. We were discovering a secret. We had access to equipment that far exceeded anything I had ever worked with. We were not using conventional geological drilling rigs. Instead, we had classified borehole systems that could cut through miles of ice at impossible speeds. The technology appeared decades ahead of what should have been available. We had sensors that detected deep thermal activity, ground-penetrating radar (GPR), scanning for underground voids, and autonomous drones designed to navigate ice tunnels. It felt like an extraterrestrial excavation rather than an Earth-based research mission. The more we drilled, the stranger it became. Our instruments started to glitch. GPS signals flickered, communications were disrupted, and our radios detected strange distortions. We initially dismissed it as geomagnetic interference, but we knew something was wrong. The air felt charged like a quiet storm brewing beneath us. One night, I overheard a conversation between two military members. "They're getting too close," one of them said. We were instructed to keep the situation contained. If they found it, I couldn't hear anything else, but that's when I realized we weren't just scientists exploring the unknown. We were pawns in something much bigger. There was a reason the world's most powerful countries agreed to keep Antarctica's secrets hidden. A reason why maps of specific regions were classified and satellites were prohibited from imaging specific locations. The electromagnetic anomalies, hollow cavities, and impossible heat signatures we observed were not natural. And then we hit something that wasn't supposed to be there. A massive structure buried miles beneath the ice. A perfect geometric formation unaltered by nature. My hands trembled as I looked at the radar scans. The radar scans revealed sharp angles, symmetrical walls, and a city-sized complex that remained dormant and untouched. Then, for the first time in my career, I experienced fear. What had we just discovered? Little did I know, our discovery was just the beginning. Initially, the signals were subtle. Minor fluctuations in electromagnetic readings and inconsistencies in our data could have been easily dismissed as instrumental noise. However, as time passed, it became clear that something beneath the ice was emitting a pattern, an intelligent, structured frequency that defied all geological explanations. These low-frequency vibrations pulsed through the ice, deep and rhythmic, like a heartbeat hidden miles beneath us. The signals were not random. They shifted as if something was aware of us. Then came the malfunctions. First, it was minor issues. Our GPS units were lagging, with readings jumping around as if we were in two places at once. Our satellite uplink failed intermittently, which was unexpected given the clear atmospheric conditions. Then things got worse. One morning, our ground-penetrating radar (GPR) refused to stabilize. We rebooted it several times, but instead of clear scans, the screen displayed erratic waveforms that alternated between extreme peaks and complete blackness. It was as if something was interfering with the data before we could analyze it. When we switched to thermal imaging, we found heat signatures where none should have existed. There were pockets of warmth beneath layers of ice that were thousands of years old, almost as if something was producing energy beneath us. Then came the voices. Strange distortions began to appear in our previously clear communication systems. At first, it sounded like static, which is unusual but not extraordinary. However, as we continued drilling, the static changed. It became whispers. At first, we thought it was radio feedback, a byproduct of the electromagnetic anomalies we were seeing. But then we saw something that made my blood run cold. The whispers were only audible when we were near the drill site. The deeper we went, the clearer things became. I remember the exact moment I heard it for myself. I was standing near one of our monitoring stations, adjusting a frequency tuner, when my earpiece cracked. Through the static I heard it, "Leave now." I froze. The words were clear and unmistakable, delivered in a voice that was neither male nor female. I ripped my headset off, my heart racing. I wasn't the only person who heard them. Others on the team reported strange phrases, murmurs, and even laughter, all faint and distant but undeniably real. A few of us started experiencing symptoms of sickness, including migraines, dizziness, and an unsettling feeling of surveillance. One of our technicians, a seasoned engineer who had spent his entire career working in harsh environments, abruptly refused to go near the excavation site. "Something is wrong down there," he said, his voice trembling. "We should not be doing this." I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to believe it was simply stress, exhaustion, or an undiscovered geological anomaly. But deep down I knew the truth. We had disturbed something and it wanted us gone. The morning of February 12, 2025 seemed different. The air was still and the sky was pale, as if the continent was holding its breath. Part of me wanted to stay inside the research station and ignore the growing unease in my chest. But I dismissed the thought, attributing it to exhaustion and stress. After all, we were scientists, not ghost hunters. We were drilling deeper than ever before, aiming for the exact location where the electromagnetic pulses had been strongest. By now, we were hearing consistent vibrations, like a distant drumbeat echoing from miles below. By 11:30 a.m., our team had gathered near the borehole site, watching as the drill carved its way deeper into the ice. The machines hummed and roared, sending vibrations through the frozen landscape. I stood near the edge of the excavation trench, adjusting my readings and attempting to make sense of the erratic data coming in. Then at 11:42 a.m., everything changed. A sudden deafening crack echoed through the air. I barely had time to react. The solid ice beneath my feet cracked like brittle glass, and before I could move, the ground gave way completely. I felt myself falling into the darkness, my stomach lurching as gravity took over. Ice and snow tumbled around me, jagged shards slicing my thermal suit, and the world above vanished in an instant. For a brief moment I believed I could grasp onto anything, but all I felt was the sensation of falling, accelerating, and plunging into a dark void. As I fell deeper and deeper into the abyss, I could hear my team's distant screams muffled by the rushing wind, followed by impact. I hit the ice hard. There was no time to process the pain, only a sickening crunch followed by a sensation of cold unlike anything I had ever experienced. Not just cold but something more. A crushing force and an unnatural weight pressed down on my chest, as if something ancient and unknown had been waiting for me down here. I gasped for air, but the cold wind ripped it out of my lungs. My vision became blurry, my limbs numb, and my heartbeat slowed. Everything around me was silent, not just the lack of sound, but a deeper, unnatural void in which even my thoughts appeared muffled. And then I felt myself slip away. Suddenly I was not in my body. I hovered above, weightless, staring down at my own broken form sprawled lifelessly on the ice. My leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and my helmet cracked, revealing some of my frozen face. Blood stained the snow around me. Its deep red color contrasted with the endless white. I should have felt terrified. I should have fought to wake up, breathe again, and hold on to life. Instead, I felt calm and detached, as if something far greater took over when my body died. Above, my team rushed to the edge of the fissure, peering down and calling out my name. Their expressions were full of horror, shock, and disbelief. "Nathan, do you hear me? Jesus Christ is not moving. Get the rope now." I watched them scramble to set up a rescue line, their voices filled with fear and urgency, but it was too late. I was gone. My meticulously built life, the scientific career for which I had sacrificed everything, and my years of dedication to reason and logic were all meaningless now. Death had found me, and I was about to uncover the terrifying truth about what lay beyond the ice. I hovered above my body, looking down at the lifeless figure sprawled across the jagged ice. It was an eerie sight. My limbs were twisted. My helmet cracked. A thin mist of frozen breath was no longer escaping my lips. I should have panicked. I should have been clawing my way back into that broken shell of a body, hoping to breathe again. But instead I felt detached, not numb or afraid but simply aware. I watched my teammates scramble above, their voices frantic. "He isn't moving. Get that damn rope down there. We need medical evacuation right now." Despite their desperation, I knew it was pointless. I was gone. I wasn't in that body anymore. Something shifted out of my peripheral vision. I saw figures, not my team, not a person. They stood motionless on the edge of the fissure, watching me. They were tall, robed in flowing light, and radiated a powerful yet gentle energy. Their faces were obscured, but their presence was imposing. They were a formidable force, possessing a clear purpose and an ancient authority. I should have been afraid, but instead I felt a strange attraction to them. And that's when I noticed the others. Behind my team, in the shadows just beyond their sight, were figures of a different kind. They were dark, twisted, and shifting, appearing as if they were composed of smoke and void. They slithered around my panicked colleagues, their movements unnatural, their mere presence making the air feel heavier and colder. They weren't simply watching. They fed on fear, death, and despair. One of them moved closer to Dr. Patel and whispered something in his ear. I saw him shudder, his face twisting in subconscious fear, completely unaware of the entity looming over him. They had no power over me, either now or outside of my body, but they infested the living world, hiding in places we never thought to look. Then the radio crackled. Something broke through the static of my team's emergency transmissions. In my mind, I hear a distorted, distant but crystal clear voice. You were not intended to see this. The words were not spoken with a single voice. It was a chorus, a layered, unnatural distortion, as if multiple beings were communicating through the same channel. Then a different and deeper voice emerged. It is the beginning. My team did not react. They couldn't hear it, but I did. And as I returned my gaze to the glowing figures standing at the edge of the fissure, I realized I was being summoned somewhere else. There is a place beyond the ice. I never intended to return to that place. As I hovered above my body, watching the chaos unfold around my lifeless form, something changed in the fabric of reality. A gentle yet undeniable force began to pull me upwards. The sensation was unlike any lift from the wind or gravity. It was as if I was being drawn to something greater beyond comprehension. Then a light appeared. It wasn't just bright. It was vibrant. A tunnel of radiant energy appeared above me, stretching indefinitely in both directions. But it was not empty. The light was a presence, filled with such profound warmth and peace that I forgot about everything else. There was pain, fear, and the mystery of what lay beneath the ice. For the first time, I felt entirely complete. As I was drawn upward, I realized it was more than just a tunnel. It served as a threshold, a link between two realities. Then I felt him before I could see him. He exudes a presence that is not only powerful and immense, but also infinitely gentle. It permeated every part of my being, every doubt, every fear. It was like reconnecting with something I'd always known but had somehow forgotten. And then he arrived. Jesus. There is no way to describe his appearance. It felt both familiar and beyond human comprehension. His eyes reflected eternity itself, like deep wells of love and sorrow intertwined. His presence exuded authority, compassion, and truth, not as abstract concepts, but as something more tangible than anything I'd ever experienced. I could barely stand in his despite the presence. I experienced no fear, only a deep sense of belonging. He spoke and his voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard. It was truth woven into existence. You weren't supposed to die yet. There's something you must see. I could not respond. I could not even think. My very soul was unraveling in front of him, exposing every moment of my life. He extended his hand, and the instant his light touched me, I saw everything. In an instant, I was no longer inside the tunnel. I was standing above the earth, looking down on it, not from space, not as a satellite image, but with eyes that saw the truth behind the illusion. The world was not what we imagined it to be. I saw Antarctica, but not as a desolate expanse of ice. Instead, it was a fortress, a seal protecting something far older and more dangerous than humanity could imagine. I turned to face Jesus, my voice trembling. What's this? What are you showing me? His eyes full of love and sorrow met mine. The world is being duped, and I knew that was just the beginning. The limitations of my physical body no longer affected me as I stood next to Jesus. It was as if I had been freed from time limitations, and even the laws of physics themselves. I had left behind the tunnel of light. I was somewhere higher beyond human perception, and the entire earth stretched out in front of me. But it wasn't the earth I'd studied my entire life. The present was not the world as seen through satellites and telescopes. The present was the world as seen through divine eyes. My gaze was drawn to Antarctica, the vast ice-covered continent that I had spent my entire career studying. Now I perceived it in its true light. The continent glowed with strange, ethereal energy pulsing beneath its frozen surface. What I had previously thought were random ice formations and glacial structures were actually perfectly symmetrical, deliberate, and engineered. I saw massive ice walls rising from the Earth's depths and stretching for miles in all directions. They were not natural. They were placed there. These walls were never intended to be crossed. Jesus' voice was both sorrowful and firm, and it resonated with me in a way that no words could. I turned to him, my mind filled with confusion. Do you mean the Antarctic ice walls? What about the natural formations? He looked at me, and in that single glance I realized how foolish my question was. They are not natural, Jesus said, his voice thunderous yet gentle. My Father ordered them here to seal what lies beneath. A wave of horrified realization washed over me. I had always considered Antarctica to be a scientific enigma, a frozen desert of rock and ice. But I had been wrong. The walls that had kept explorers and scientists out for centuries were not natural barriers. They were a divine prison. What lies beneath? I whispered, already fearing the response. Jesus extended his hand, and my vision expanded. The ice vanished as if it had never existed, and beneath it, stretching for miles in every direction, lay a buried civilization, not ruins or remnants of a forgotten human settlement. The underground city evoked a sense of something far older, much more alien, with massive structures unlike anything built by humans, pulsing with an unnatural energy, geometrically impossible towers, vast labyrinthine tunnels, and a sense of deep, suffocating wrongness pervaded the underground city. And in the center of it all was a massive chasm, a void darker than the absence of light itself. Something moved within that abyss, something that should never have been disturbed. This is why the world was kept at a distance. Jesus' voice was filled with sadness, as if he knew what was about to happen and couldn't stop it. Humanity, in its conceit, is poised to break through the barrier. I saw visions of the near future, with scientists drilling deeper, uncovering fragments of what was hidden and gradually revealing it to the world, governments hailing it as the greatest archaeological discovery of all time, and leaders embracing the findings as proof of humanity's lost origins. But it was all a ruse. They will not call it what it truly is, Jesus declared. They will present it as a revelation, a new chapter for humanity, a gift. But their claim is a lie. The world would be deceived into believing that what lay beneath Antarctica was the key to enlightenment, power, and evolution. But it wasn't like that. It is a key, Jesus explained, but not to enlightenment. It is crucial to their release. My heart pounded as I watched scientists unknowingly break the final barrier as the darkness beneath stirred, and the first shadows began to emerge. I turned to Jesus in desperation. How can we stop this? His expression was both sorrowful and determined. You can't stop it. Despair gripped me, but when he placed his hand on my shoulder, warmth flowed through me. But you can warn them. Suddenly the vision shattered, the ice returned, the light around us dimmed, and I felt myself being drawn away, back toward my body, back toward the world I had abandoned. And as I fell, his final words echoed in my soul. Tell them the truth. Don't wait until it's too late. I fell, not returning to my body just yet. I was falling through time, layers of existence, and the veil that had kept humanity blind for millennia. And as I fell, I saw it. The buried city beneath Antarctica. It was not made of stone or ice, and it bore no resemblance to anything man-made. The structures twisted, shifted, and pulsed as if alive, refusing to follow natural geometry. The longer I looked, the harder it became to understand. I wasn't only seeing a city. I was witnessing something much older than human civilization itself. The architecture defied logic. Colossal towers spiraled in directions that defied physics, curving inward and outward simultaneously. Bridges hung in the air without support, and deep trenches of liquid darkness pulsed as if breathing. Nothing was static. The city was constantly changing, as if it were adapting, reacting, or waiting. A massive cyclopean fortress stood out in the center, towering over everything. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Its surface carved with ancient symbols that shifted and writhed as if attempting to escape the stone itself. Then I felt them. Something stirred beneath the fortress, within the massive blackened tombs. They were not dead. They were not asleep. They were waiting. Their presence radiated outward, ancient, malevolent, intelligent, and beyond human comprehension. I couldn't see them, but I could feel their consciousness pressing against mine, studying me with a spiritual, rather than physical hunger. Are you feeling it? Jesus' voice echoed through me, a calming force amidst the chaos of the vision. I turned to him, my voice barely audible. So what are they? He looked at the city with profound sorrow. They were once mighty. They were once gorgeous. My breath caught. The fallen. A tidal wave of understanding washed over me. They were not aliens. These weren't lost civilizations. These were the ancient ones, the Nephilim, the survivors of a cataclysmic rebellion that God himself cast into the depths of the earth. They had been imprisoned beneath Antarctica. For ages they had been imprisoned, their influence muffled, and their power limited. However, the seal was deteriorating due to human intervention rather than natural aging. Suddenly, I witnessed decades of hidden knowledge unfold before me. Secret societies, world leaders, and high-ranking military officials had all heard about this location. They discovered fragments of the truth recorded in ancient texts, forbidden scrolls, and whispers passed down through powerful bloodlines. They had spent decades preparing the world, perfecting a deception so that when the time came, humanity would accept its demise. They would describe it as a discovery. They'd call it contact. They would describe it as a gift to mankind. But they knew the truth. They did not discover this location by accident. They were following a script. Deep beneath the ice, I sensed the first signs of their awakening. The ground rumbled not like an earthquake, but like a heartbeat that had stopped for far too long. They were aware of us now. The drills, electromagnetic signals, and human presence had all triggered something. Once they broke the final seal, they would ascend once more. I returned to Jesus, my soul trembling. How can we stop this? His expression was solemn and firm. You cannot. My heart pounded. So what do we do? His eyes, full of infinite wisdom, met mine. Warn them. Suddenly the vision shattered. I felt myself being drawn away, spiraling back toward my body, the radiant light surrounding Jesus growing distant and fading, and as I fell, I heard his final words echoing through my soul. The greatest deception is coming. Tell them before it's too late. I was falling. As I was pulled back, the image of the buried city, the ancient seals, and the imprisoned entities faded into darkness. But before I returned to my body, Jesus gave me one final revelation about how the world would be deceived. It would not occur suddenly. It would be carefully planned. I saw the future unfold like a movie. Governments and scientific institutions would begin to release small amounts of information about their discoveries in Antarctica. At first glance, announcements about unexpected anomalies, ancient ruins, and biological discoveries beneath the ice appeared to be harmless. The first major revelation would be made public. We found evidence of an advanced civilization beneath Antarctica. The media would sensationalize it. Experts speculated on who they were, how they lived, and what they left behind. The real deception would come next. The elite, those who control the world's systems, would present a new narrative. This discovery alters everything. They would explain to the world that these beings, whoever they were not hostile. They were not demons, fallen angels, or anything else we had read about in ancient texts. Instead, they would be portrayed as our benefactors and creators. The public would be informed that these entities created humanity long ago, shaping our evolution and directing our progress. Every ancient religion and belief system had misunderstood them. The world's greatest spiritual leaders, some knowingly, some unknowingly, would validate this revelation, proclaiming, "This is the truth we were looking for." The gods of old were not myths. They were the ones who came before us. We're finally ready to meet them again. I witnessed massive global celebrations, with people rejoicing in the streets, welcoming this new chapter for humanity. The deception would be completed, but it would not end there. The entities once sealed beneath the ice would be presented not only as ancient beings, but also as guides for humanity's destiny. They've returned to help us climb. They would make promises about technological advancements, cures for disease, famine, and energy crises. They would introduce a new way of thinking, a spiritual awakening free of the constraints imposed by outdated religions. People would flock to them, desperate for the information they claimed to provide. The scientific community, which was already primed to reject the supernatural, would follow suit, portraying the phenomenon as the next great step in human evolution. Then the final deception would occur. The entities would present the world with a seemingly non-existent choice. The entities would provide the next step in evolution by using biotechnology, genetic modifications, or neurological enhancements. We can increase your strength, intelligence, and resistance to disease. We can extend your life indefinitely. You no longer have to fear death. But they wouldn't tell the world that accepting these gifts meant giving up their souls. They would be cut off from God forever, but the masses would accept it willingly. This is not control, they would argue. This is freedom. This is the future. This is our destiny. Nobody would question it, not because they weren't permitted to, but because they didn't want to. Anyone who protested, spoke out, or attempted to warn the world would be silenced, mocked, or dismissed as conspiracy theorists. Even the church would become divided. Some would remain steadfast, warning that this was the great deception predicted in prophecy. However, others would be willing to compromise. Perhaps God intended this all along. Maybe this is our destiny. And with that, the entire world would fall into the trap. I felt myself being ripped away from the vision, my soul screaming under the weight of what I had witnessed. As I was dragged back into my body, one last truth burned into my consciousness. The world is unprepared for the greatest lie ever told. I felt myself sinking through time, through the fabric of reality itself. The image of the great deception lingered in my mind like an eternal scar. But what happened next was even scarier. Jesus was still beside me, the only thing keeping me from being consumed by the enormity of what I was witnessing. They will not force the world to accept it, he said calmly. They won't have to. They'll make them want it. I saw it, the final stage of deception. Entities that had previously been hidden beneath Antarctica were now among the people. They walked freely, no longer carrying myths or forbidden knowledge, but honoring saviors. They came bearing gifts. Technology capable of curing illness, restoring youth, and enhancing the human mind beyond what was naturally possible. This represents the next step in human evolution. The world's leaders would say, "This is how we ascend." It would be called a gift, an upgrade, or a way to overcome human limitations. Wealthy, powerful, and influential people would be the first to embrace it. Celebrities, politicians, and even religious leaders would publicly praise its benefits. Imagine a world without disease, aging, weakness, or suffering. We have the potential to evolve beyond our human nature. They would beg for it. But Jesus turned to me, his expression sorrowful but firm. "It's the mark." I felt a crushing sorrow as I realized what he meant. This gift, this upgrade, was both physical and spiritual. Whoever accepted it would be changed permanently, not just biologically. Their very souls would be changed. They would lose the ability to hear God's voice. The bond between man and his Creator would be severed. If they take it, they will no longer be mine, Jesus warned. A wave of indescribable grief washed over me as I saw people lining up to get it, not out of fear, but out of desire. They did not feel compelled to do it. It was a choice. However, the choice was an illusion. Decades of conditioning had prepared them for this occasion. They were programmed to crave it, seeing it as fulfillment, not loss of humanity. And as each person accepted it, I noticed something leave them. A light, a spark, the essence of what made them human. Then I witnessed the opposing side. Those who refused discerned the deceit, and steadfastly adhered to faith, truth, and caution before it was too late. They were pursued not as criminals or enemies, but as impediments to advancement. They were pushed to the periphery of society, denied access to the very systems that now govern human existence. They were described as dangerous, backward, and a threat to humanity's future. They disappeared one by one, slowly and methodically, until the world thought they never existed. I turned to Jesus with desperation in my voice. "How can we stop this?" His gaze pierced through me, filled with an intensity one could barely bear. "You can't stop it." My soul was shattered by his words. "So what can we do?" "Warn them." A gust of wind blew through my spirit, and I was yanked away, ripped from the vision, the presence of Jesus, and the infinite sorrow of what I had witnessed. The last thing I heard before the darkness overtook me was his voice, clear and resolute. "The choice is coming. But there is no choice at all." I felt myself falling, being drawn away from Jesus' presence, from the divine vantage point from which I had seen the truth of Antarctica, the deception, the mark, and the impending decision. I would rather not leave. I wanted to stay in that place where everything was clear, where truth was not concealed by deception, and where God's presence was all-consuming. But Jesus had a final message for me. He placed his hand on my shoulder, and I felt a power that was overwhelming, absolute, and full of infinite love. His voice was firm yet sorrowful. You must return. You must warn them. My heart clenched. I whispered, they won't believe me. Some will, he responded. That's enough. Then his expression darkened, filled with a gravity that I could barely bear. They will silence you. Speak anyway. And then I was ripped away from him, thrown back through time, space, and reality itself. The brilliant light faded. The vision of Antarctica, with the seals breaking and the entities rising, all faded into darkness. Then I felt pain. A searing, unbearable fire tore through my chest, lungs, and veins. I took a desperate, choking breath as I was slammed back into my body. The sounds rushed in. Machines are beeping. Shouts. Frantic movement. Hands pressed against my chest. He's back. Their voices were filled with shock and disbelief. You have 12 minutes, doctor. He disappeared for 12 minutes. I opened my eyes and blinked against the sterile white glow of hospital lights. I was in a medical bay, with wires attached to my skin and 4 pumps delivering something cold to my arm. My team of scientists, doctors, and government officials stood frozen, their faces pale, wide-eyed, and disbelieving. My closest colleague, Dr. Patel, was gripping the bed rail, his knuckles white. Nathan's voice was barely audible. We thought you were gone. I stared at him, my mind still divided between the realm I'd just left and the horror of what I'd witnessed. I attempted to speak, but my throat burned. My chest hurt from the CPR compressions. A doctor, an older man with graying hair, leaned in. Dr. Pierce, do you remember anything? I swallowed, my mouth dry, and then the weight of it all fell on me. I had witnessed the truth. I had spoken with Jesus Christ himself. I was sent back with a warning, and now I'm supposed to pretend that none of this happened? No, I would not. Couldn't. I licked my cracked lips and uttered the only words that mattered. This is all a lie. The doctors exchanged confused looks. What is it? Dr. Patel asked. I turned my head to him, my voice hoarse but firm. Discover Antarctica and experience the awakening that awaits us. It is not what they claim it is. I took a shaky breath. I didn't get much sleep the first night back in my body. Every time I closed my eyes, the visions reappeared. The visions of the buried city, the broken seals, and the deception that looms over the world like a shadow were all still present. They sent me back to warn them, but it didn't take long for me to understand that not everyone desired to hear the truth. They arrived the next morning, before the sun had even risen. 2 men in dark suits, crisp and expressionless, walked into my hospital room without introduction. They were not doctors, scientists, or government officials that I recognized. They were something else. A tall man with piercing blue eyes pulled up a chair beside my bed. His movements were measured and deliberate. The other stood near the door, arms crossed and watching. The blue-eyed man folded his hands. Dr. Pierce, you've had a traumatic experience. I said nothing. I remained silent for 12 minutes. That is a thing for the brain. We've seen cases of people having vivid hallucinations, including near-religious visions. It is common. I clenched my jaw. I knew what I'd seen. He leaned in slightly. You made some concerning statements yesterday. About Antarctica. The story revolves around a deception. We'd like to know where that is coming from. I stared at him, my heart rate starting to rise. I recognized this game. The practice wasn't a curiosity. The action was called containment. I met his gaze. I did not experience any hallucinations. Was there a fleeting sense of irritation? Concern? It passed across his face, but it vanished just as quickly. I see. He sighed as if disappointed. Dr. Pierce, let us be clear. You were on a classified research mission. Some information is sensitive. We would not want misunderstandings to spread to the public. There it was. The warning is hidden beneath politeness. I didn't respond. The other man, still standing by the door, finally spoke, his tone cold and calculated. For your own and others' safety, we strongly advise you to disregard what you believe you saw. My hands grasped the hospital blanket. What if I don't? The blue-eyed man smiled. However, there was nothing warm about it. Then you'll wish you did. They left without saying anything else. I sat there, heart pounding in my ears. I'd been warned, but I wasn't going to stop. My hospital phone buzzed that night, just as I was falling asleep restlessly. It was an unknown number. I answered hesitantly. A low, hurried voice spoke. "Dr. Pierce, I do not have much time. You have to listen." I froze. "Who is this?" "That is not relevant. But I know what you witnessed." I felt a chill run through my body. "You are not wrong." I gripped the phone more tightly. "They have known about it for decades. They may have been aware of it for even longer. They have been gradually preparing the world to accept what is to come." My breath caught. "What about the deception?" A pause. Then in a barely audible whisper, "It's too late." The line went dead. Days have passed. Then weeks. The world outside remained as if nothing had changed. People went to work, watched television, and scrolled through their news feeds, completely unaware of what was going to happen. But I saw it. The gradual release of information had begun. At first, the stories appeared innocent enough. News outlets reported that unusual heat signatures were discovered beneath Antarctica's ice. Scientists spoke about potentially groundbreaking discoveries. Then the headlines changed. Has civilization vanished beneath the ice? New discoveries indicate that humanity's history is incomplete. Have government scientists discovered strange anomalies in Antarctica? Are we prepared for the truth? I watched horrified, as they framed the story precisely as Jesus had warned. They referred to it as a revelation rather than what it truly was. A divine prison holding back an ancient evil. They weren't hiding it any longer. They were priming the world to accept it. And the worst part? Everyone wanted to believe it. I have tried to warn those around me. Some people listen. Most do not. I've asked them not to believe what the media portrays as truth. I've warned them about the impending deception. They laugh it off, calling it a conspiracy. They say that if something was truly happening, we'd know. I shook my head. You are already being conditioned to accept it. I try to tell them what I saw and what Jesus revealed to me. But their minds have already been dulled by the constant barrage of news clips, expert opinions, and government statements. The programming worked. The lie has already been woven into their reality. And then one night something happened. A news anchor from one of the world's largest networks uttered words that chilled my soul. In the coming months, we can expect a major revelation about our place in space. I understood what that meant. They weren't discussing Antarctica as a scientific breakthrough anymore. They were preparing the world for the arrival of those who had been locked away. And when that day comes, the world will not be able to resist. They will welcome them. They'll worship them. They'll believe everything they say. Because they were prepared to. I'm not sure how much longer I have. I am not sure if they will come after me next. But I know this. If you are reading this, you must be awake. Don't believe what they say. The deception is approaching. And when it does, you must decide whether to tell the truth or lie. Is it God or the false light? Once you accept the lie, there is no turning back.